Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com. You know, boxing is a unique sport, and we're reminded of that this weekend. Just like if you look at professional skateboarders, you realize that they take more risks than the average person. Not just in skateboarding, but they're thrill seekers in the rest of their lives. Same thing with surfers. Same thing with professional football players. In boxing, the kind of man or woman who would literally hop in the ring and risk their lives in a prize fight for fame and glory is someone who, in my opinion, more times than not, will just have a higher risk tolerance, will just seek out adventure more than the average person. Years ago, Diego Corrales got killed in a motorcycle accident. This weekend, Paul Williams, after signing on to one of the biggest fights of his career, apparently was in a motorcycle accident and, according to reports, is paralyzed below the waist. Right? Williams, as boxers are prone to do, told his trainer that he hopes to hop back in the ring. Right? Walking's not enough. Paul Williams believes, as most boxers do, that he can beat the odds. Right? This is that thing that keeps boxers driven. Right? They have a hard time walking away from the sport. They have a hard time not taking chances. Let's pray for Paul Williams. Let's hope that he gets back on his feet. Let's hope that he's able to at least have the kind of rest of his life that he hopes to have. Right? But just understand that he's not the first fighter to have been out doing something that the rest of us would look at as surprising. Right? Keep in mind, this is after he signed to fight Saul Alvarez. Apparently he was at his brother's wedding. And of course, what better time in his mind than to go on a bike and to take chances. Right? My prayers are with Paul Williams. Also, this weekend was even more devastating. One of my personal favorite fighters, really one of the most gifted fighters I've ever seen, Johnny Tapia, apparently tapped out. Tapia, dead in his mid-40s, way too soon. The only fighter I can compare Tapia to in terms of his ability to literally counter whatever you threw, see what you're doing, face you, stay calm in the middle of another fighter's flurry and be able to flurry back. The only fighter I can say had that kind of mental makeup where the sport must be in slow motion for him is James Toney. Right? Johnny Tapia really was a gifted fighter. I encourage you to look up Tapia videos online on my channel page right now. I have a Tapia video up of career highlights, and all I can say is I know the press is focusing on personal issues that Johnny Tapia had. As fight fans, let's remember that Johnny Tapia was more than the personal issues. He was actually a great fighter. A great fighter. Now, some fighters live for fighting. You look at Timothy Bradley, and I couldn't imagine Timothy Bradley in the ring at less than 100%. He's always in shape. Bernard Hopkins, right? Always in shape. Hopkins' mentor. Marvelous Marvin Hagler. These guys are the guys who run several miles every day to make sure that they are in tip-top shape because they want to give themselves the best chance of winning. But understand, there's a whole other school of boxing, right? We'll call it the Carlos Monzon school, where the guy is just so talented that the guy actually has a lifestyle, right? Fighting isn't the end, it's the means for him to go out on the town, stay out late, carouse, be in the nightclub, be the celebrity, have the life, and then, of course, when a fight comes up, he has to get himself in shape, but the skills are so polished, right? The gifts, the hand speed, the timing, the understanding is so innate that the fighter is able to excel in the ring, right? James Toney belongs in that school of thought. Any fighter you can think of who's a man about town, who's a celebrity, who looks like in between fights he's out carousing. Ricky Hatton, he's out carousing, he's at the bar, he's celebrating life, and then of course he gets back in the ring and has to lose weight for fights, but has skills, Roberto Duran, that just translate in the ring, right? Guys like that understand who Johnny Tapia was. Johnny Tapia was the poster child of the just extraordinarily gifted fighter who could have, in his words, a vida loca outside the ring, a crazy life outside the ring, but inside the ring, he was the master of his domain. If you want to see a great fighter, look at young Johnny Tapia. That's a great fighter. The reason he's not on the top 10 or top 100 all-time list is, well, maybe he is, depending on your preferences, but it's simply because the personal problems derailed him a bit in the middle of his career. Had he had the discipline of, let's say, a Bernard Hopkins or a Marvelous Marvin Hagler, the sky was the limit for Johnny Tapia. As it was, he was an excellent fighter. We should remember him not for the risk-taking outside the ring. We should remember him for the risk-taking inside the ring. He was a great fighter. It's a huge loss. If you have a Tapia story, if you recall watching a Tapia fight and the circumstances around that fight, or if you have a Paul Williams story. And let me just say, I know I have criticized Williams' defense and things like that before the bike accident, but there's one thing I never criticized on Paul Williams, and that was his heart. He's a warrior. He remains a warrior, right? If you have a Paul Williams story, then I hope you share it with all of us here on our online boxing community here on YouTube. Thanks for watching.